So America's dad, Bernard Sanders, hopped on a bus with Americans with type 1 diabetes. And he went to Canada with them to get cheaper insulin. So his whole point in doing this was to shine a light on what people in this country have to go through in order to do basic things like make sure they don't die and get their medicine. Now, we covered a story actually on the last show about medicine refugees going to Mexico. We've actually covered the Canada angle probably a month ago or so. And now it's Mexico as well. And we learned the details of that. And Vice News did a great piece where they go with diabetics to Mexico and they save so much money when they do it. And just so everybody knows, it's literally the same medicine. The same pharmaceutical companies make this medicine and it is just cheaper in Canada and Mexico. Same quality, just cheaper. Because the way their system functions, their respective systems, is just better. It's just better. There's not as much of an unnecessary, rapacious, for-profit middleman. It's the mafia in the middle, for sure. So here's what Bernie tweeted about this. This vial of insulin costs just $6 to manufacture. At this pharmacy in Windsor, Ontario, it can be purchased for $32. 20 minutes away in Detroit, the same exact vial costs $340. It is time for a government that works for the American people, not drug companies' profits. $6 to manufacture. And it costs $32 in Windsor, Ontario, and $340 in the United States. In this country, we are 100% getting ripped off, getting price gouged by rapacious, criminal, big pharma middlemen. Bernie Sanders was on CNN yesterday, and he compared pharmaceutical CEOs to murderers. And you know what? He's right. People die because of how they price these drugs. And don't pretend, as many people do, like, what do you mean? The price is simply supply and demand, and it's written in the laws of nature. And so it makes sense that in the United States it costs $340 for something that costs $6 to manufacture, even though it's only $32 in Windsor, Ontario. That somehow makes sense, and we need to accept it as a standard operating procedure. Yes. We must get ripped off, and people must die, and people must go to Mexico and Canada to get their drugs because that's the way the system works. There's this, like, naturalistic fallacy of trying to say that since everything operates this way now, therefore, there is no other option and no way to fix it, and it just is what it is. This is something you hear all the time from libertarians when you say, hey, it's kind of fucked up that people can't afford their insulin and they might die and then they have to go to Canada or Mexico. And they're like, do you even economics, bro? Like, do you even know basic economics and stuff, bro? Do you even know basic economics, bro? Do you even know basic economics, bro? Yeah. You even know basic economics, bro? There's an old tweet that I love. It's my favorite of all time on Twitter. It says, you see where this line on the graph meets this line on the graph? That's why the poor should starve. It's like the best encapsulation of just absolutely obliterating libertarian philosophy. But anyway, so Bernie's shining a light on this, and he's saying, look at what people have to go through in this country. You know, we talk about all the time, we bitch and moan about, oh, the immigrants and refugees coming from Mexico into our wonderful land of opportunity, the United States. And then at the same time, you see the buses going by in slow motion, going from the U.S. into Canada to get better, to get less expensive drugs so they can survive. By the way, what's kind of hilarious about this is that Bernie Sanders technically participated in illegal activity of smuggling drugs back into the United States from Canada. He smuggled drugs across borders, which is technically illegal. But you know what? It's for all the right reasons. Bernie also did this back in 1999, just so you know. He also did this back in 1999, and it shows you this guy has been on the front lines, leading the fight every step of the way and doing everything he can to try to fix the system, and we know that as president, he would go full court press on the offense to make sure he represents the people, make sure he fights back against Big Pharma. This isn't a question, guys. This candidate is just so far above and beyond everybody else. Now, I want to show you one more tweet here. Brian Lawrence said the following. Hunter Seago started rationing his insulin when he found out his parents were sacrificing water and food to pay for his insulin. A star athlete in school, his performance and grades dramatically suffered as a result. In the wealthiest nation in history, this should be unacceptable. And then there are other stories as well of people tweeting at Bernie Sanders. I remember one person said, my mom died from diabetes because she was rationing her insulin, and I want to thank the senator for doing everything that he can to fix this. It's heartbreaking, man. A lot of this stuff is heartbreaking. It's unacceptable. I mean, that we live in a country that's as wealthy as our country is, but regular people are screwed over and can't get the medicine they need. I mean, some people might say this is apples and oranges. Some people might say this is a non sequitur, but we spent $7 trillion in Iraq, $2 trillion in Afghanistan. Every time we pass a military budget, we increase it drastically. We pay more than the next 10 biggest nations combined in their respective militaries. And then they have the nerve to turn around and say, well, we can't afford to make any changes to fix our broken healthcare system and pharmaceutical drug price system. It's beyond grotesque, it's untrue, and it's time for radical fundamental change.